Major Adham Sabri strode with wide, purposeful steps through the towering gates of the Egyptian General Intelligence Building. He raised a hand in salute to the guard, who returned the gesture with a formal smile, muttering hushed greetings that never quite reached Adham's ears. Adham reached the building's entrance, ascending the stairs with nimble grace, acknowledging his colleagues who moved with dedication and vigor. He then quickened his pace down the long corridor, flanked by closed rooms, pausing before a door marked with a number 7. He knocked. He waited a moment until he heard a voice, tinged with impatience, say, "Hurry in, you who knock, and be sure to bring some warm air with you." Adham pushed the door handle, entered the room, and closed it behind him. A familiar, sarcastic smile played on his lips as he said, "My apologies, my corpulent friend. I've brought with me some breaths of summer." A high, merry laugh erupted in the room. Qadri rose from his small chair, his large, flabby body rolling as he warmly shook Adham's hand, saying with a welcoming tone, "Welcome, Major. What a delightful surprise! When did you return from Hong Kong?" Adham smiled, and as he sat on a facing chair, replied, "What's this? Are there no longer any secrets within the walls of the Directorate?" Qadri's corpulent body shook with merry laughter, then winked, saying, "This is the only room that holds no secrets, my friend, for from here emerge your forged passports and skillfully altered photographs." Adham laughed, patting Qadri's shoulder, saying, "Enough boasting, king of forgers." He then stood and adjusted his necktie. Qadri laughed, pointing at him. "Tell me, by God, Adham, how can you wear a full suit and tie in July? I permanently reside sheltered by the air conditioning of this room." Adham shrugged and smiled, saying, "Elegance, my friend. And don't forget, outside this building, I am a businessman, not an intelligence officer."
Qadri guffawed, about to comment on Adam's remark, when the latter opened the room door, saying, "Forgive me, my corpulent friend. I would have loved to spend more time in your company, but I am here on official business. The director summoned me immediately upon my return from Hong Kong, and I doubt I'll even have enough time to unpack my bags." Qadri murmured in a low voice, his tone betraying admiration. "Such is the price of excellence, my friend. You pay the cost of being dubbed the Impossible Man." The Director of Intelligence was not in his office, so Adam met him in the cinematic viewing room as requested. As soon as the director's gaze fell upon his man, he gestured for him to sit beside him. He lit a cigar, exhaling its smoke into the air, before speaking in a voice tinged with hidden concern. "The report you submitted on the Hong Kong operation is excellent, Major. I congratulate you. Now, lend me your ear and full attention." He straightened in his seat, took a deep draw from his cigar, and continued, "I had a mission that required a man like you, N1, but I deemed it wise not to assign it to you, as it requires travel to the United States, and you know how many enemies you have there." Adam shrugged, saying flatly, "If you mean Don Ricardo and the Mafia, that doesn't frighten me, sir. Besides, Don Ricardo is still in prison since I brought him down before." The Director of Intelligence offered a pale smile. He said, "Don Ricardo runs the Mafia from his prison cell as if he lives among them, N1, and he remains the leader of American gangs to this day." He then exhaled his cigar smoke with a hint of nervousness, continuing, "Let us return to the mission I summoned you for." With a wave of his hand, the lights in the cinematic viewing room dimmed, and a moving film began to play, showing a private port on the coast of the Gulf of Mexico. The director of intelligence watched the scene with interest and said, "What you see now is the private port of a man named James Brand, one of the economic magnates in the United States of America, a billionaire who alone owns nearly a fifth of Texas, in addition to a large number of industrial and commercial facilities. He is, in short, the uncrowned king of Texas. He naturally possesses an army of private guards and a complete arsenal of weapons. Some exaggerate and say it might include a nuclear bomb, but we consider that an overstatement." Adam divided his senses between listening to the director of intelligence and watching the film, which now displayed the image of a man of medium height and weight, inclined towards stoutness, with a square, harsh-featured face, thin eyebrows, narrow eyes, a prominent nose, a clean-shaven face, a wide mouth, and thick, completely gray hair. The man moved with calm steps and wore extremely elegant clothes, a white suit and a red shirt that seemed ill-suited for his approaching 60s. In his lapel, a large red carnation was pinned, and between his teeth a large, lit cigar, which he chewed as he spoke arrogantly to several men surrounding him. The director of intelligence, pointing to the man, said, "This is James Brand, N1. This man's life, his millions or billions, mean nothing to us. What prompted us to monitor and track him is that we discovered, through some of our agents in a hostile country, that James Brand is the giant of espionage in the United States of America." Adam's eyebrow rose as he re-examined the man with his gaze.
"Which side does this James Brand lean towards, sir?" The director of intelligence replied with similar calmness. "He works for himself, 9-1. I previously told you that I preferred not to assign you this mission, which is why I sent Issam Abdelhamid." Adham explained in surprise. "Major Issam, but he is one of the most recent to join intelligence, sir, and his experience in this field." The director of intelligence interrupted him, saying with distress and regret, "Texas police found Issam's body drowned in the Gulf of Mexico, Major." Adham sharply rose from his seat, walked a few steps, then turned to his superior and said in a voice brimming with indignation, "But why, sir?" The director of intelligence, lighting another cigar, said, "That is what you will investigate, Major. I sent Issam because I thought the mission was simple. It didn't require a highly astute man. All I asked him was to gather as much information as possible about James Brand, so we could determine if he could be utilized or if he was working for a hostile nation. Issam must have exposed himself through some mistake, and James Brand would not hesitate to kill to protect his empire." He then exhaled his cigar smoke, his agitation evident. "James Brand has declared war on us by killing Issam." He rose and intently observed James's image. Then he calmly continued, "This man is hiding something, Adham. Something that harms our nation, and we must uncover it." He slowly turned his entire body to face Adham and said, "When will you and your colleague be ready, 9-1? Adham's eyes gleamed with resolve and determination as he said, slowly and powerfully, "Immediately, sir, for Egypt and for the martyr Issam."
James Brand descended from his elegant Buick, donning his dark sunglasses. He strode with steps filled with arrogance, surrounded by a large contingent of his armed guards. One of them quickly pulled up a chair, bowing subserviently until James was seated.
Another man swiftly lit James's cigar with a lighter. James exhaled the cigar smoke with his characteristic grandeur, his gaze sweeping over the crowd gathered around the arena where the rodeo competition was about to begin. He suddenly stopped, his eyes narrowing, when his gaze fell upon a blonde girl speaking merrily to a tall, handsome man sitting beside her. He gestured to one of his men and whispered, "I see two new faces in the arena, Andrew. Who is this captivating blonde?" Andrew stole a glance at where the man and girl were sitting and said, "This handsome, heavily mustached man is a Mexican named Anzio, and he has entered his name to participate in the competition. As for his colleague, she is likely French, as she speaks neither American nor Spanish." James looked once more at the man and the girl, then slowly asked, "Has this Anzio ever participated in rodeo competitions?" Andrew shook his head negatively and replied, "I've never heard his name before, nor do I recall his features." James smiled cunningly, confidently, and said, "Then contact our friend Sander and ask him to investigate the matter. I'd be surprised if he doesn't have a sports history for this Anzio fellow." A sarcastic laugh escaped his lips as he added, "It's only a matter of moments until things become clear. This Anzio won't last more than a second on the back of his horse." Mona Taufik smiled, feigning amusement, as she whispered in Adham's ear, her voice betraying the anxiety churning within her, "I don't object to your decision,
Adham, but what worries me is your participation in a competition whose rules I don't quite understand." Adham smiled, toying with his thick false mustache, and said, "It's a quaint and very simple competition, my dear. All that matters is for the contestant to manage to stay on the back of a wild, untamed horse for just half a minute. Then, contestants will be tested on their roping skills and catching a rebellious calf and tying it securely in the shortest possible time." Mona smiled sarcastically and said, "Oh, the simplicity, just like in those old cowboy movies." Then she added with concern, "Listen, Major, these competitions are extremely difficult and dangerous, and their champions spend years training for these things you see as so simple. And don't forget that some of them suffer fractures and bruises despite continuous grueling training." Adham laughed and patted her shoulders, saying simply, "Don't worry, my dear. It's simpler than you imagine." She was about to object when the cheers and shouts of the spectators rose. Adham calmly said, "The matter is settled, my dear. The competition has begun." Mona watched the contestants intently, and soon every flicker of her expression betrayed extreme and intense anxiety as she witnessed the violent, brutal movements each of them made in an attempt to control their horse. Then she turned to Adham and clutched his arm, crying, "Please, sir, abandon this competition." Adham smiled and gently removed her hand, saying, "Impossible, my dear. James Brand has bet $200,000 on the victory of the previous champion, and we must surprise him." She muttered angrily, "My heart tells me the surprise will be on us." He laughed sarcastically, saying, "I think it's best I collect the bet amount and my winnings. Only that arrogant Mexican is left." Andrew said calmly, "Let's wait a little, sir, to at least watch his performance." James guffawed. "Yes, Andrew, I think I need some entertainment." He then pointed to where the horses were charging and said, "Watch, men, the farce is about to begin." Despite James' sarcastic tone, The spectators' eyes were fixated on Adham's slender body as he launched himself onto a jet-black horse, which violently and savagely struck the ground and air with its hooves, foaming, frothing from its jaws as it tried to dislodge the rider clinging to its back. It was a fierce, brutal struggle between an untamed horse refusing submission and the man as solid as steel, gripping its reins with an iron fist and pressing his thighs against its flank with a force the horse had never before encountered. It was a struggle between a horse that once led its herd and the man considered a prodigy among humans. The spectators rose, consumed by excitement, and silence enveloped them for moments. Then enthusiastic cheers erupted from some of their mouths, and quickly the spectators became inflamed with excitement. James leapt from his seat, abandoning his composure, and shouted in astonishment, "Impossible! Impossible! He's exceeded a minute!" The competition arena transformed into a blazing mass of excitement, and shouts erupted from throats as Adham surpassed the minute and the ath on his horse, whose ferocity increased, jumping wildly as if refusing defeat. But Adham tightened his grip on the reins, saying with sarcasm,
"Surrender, my friend. I have defeated those fiercer and more brutal than you." In James's box, overcome with astonishment, Andrew cried out in disbelief, "Impossible! He's surpassed 2 minutes. The horse will give up." The horse's ferocity had subsided, and it began to strike its hooves on the ground in defeat, as if acknowledging its rider's power and control. The former champion raised his hat and said in amazement, "By the devil! I never imagined this could happen in our era." The spectators leapt from their seats, their hats flying into the air, consumed by a frenzied enthusiasm, as the horse completely surrendered and walked with calm, submissive steps, responding to its rider. An old man sitting in the front seats shouted, throwing his hat towards Adam, "To you, young man, goes the pride. There are still knights in the West." Adam skillfully caught the hat, then tossed it back to land on the old man's head, which further fueled the crowd's enthusiasm and wild cheers. With calm simplicity, he dismounted the horse and patted it, smiling as he waved to Mona, who, fighting back tears, said, "Yes, old man, there are still knights, but not in the West." As for James, he muttered in vexation, "It's not over yet. He still has half the competition left. He must catch his prey in less than half a minute." Andrew pointed to the arena and said, "Here they are, releasing the calf, and here's Ancio throwing his lasso towards it." James turned to him, saying indignantly, "Let's see how long it takes him to perform his task. Why is your jaw hanging like that?" Andrew pointed to the arena with trembling fingers and tried to speak, but the frenzied cheers of the crowd drowned out his voice. James sharply turned his head, and his lower jaw dropped in turn, his lit cigar falling, and his bulging eyes disappeared behind his sunglasses as he stared in disbelief at Adam, who was putting the final touches on the restraints, then rising and raising his hat in salute to the electrified crowd. James shouted in astonishment, looking at his watch, 10 seconds? Impossible! This man is not human. He is a devil." He then slammed his hand on his seat, shouting in furious rage, "I want this man and his blonde beauty, Andrew. I want them, whatever the price."
The cheering crowd carried Adam with enthusiasm, and their shouts reverberated to where he received his prize, a golden horse kicking the air with its hind legs. A number of rodeo professionals approached Adam, offering participation in other competitions on their behalf, and tried to entice him with large sums. But he put his arm around Mona's shoulder, smiling, "Not now, gentlemen. Perhaps next year." Then came Andrew's decisive, powerful voice saying, "Come on, gentlemen, the party is over. Everyone back to their homes." Here, too, James Brand's power and influence became evident, for everyone fell silent and began to leave, muttering indignant words that no one dared to utter aloud. Soon, Adam found himself alone with Mona in the arena, facing James Brand's men. James himself sat in the back seat of his car, exhaling cigar smoke with his usual grandeur, observing the situation with confidence. Adam, pulling Mona by the wrist, said sarcastically, "Come on, my dear Catherine. It seems these gentlemen prefer to be alone." Andrew stopped him, extending his arm, saying, "Mr. James wishes to meet you, Señor Ancio." Adam sarcastically observed Andrew's long stature, his strong rectangular face with wide eyes, small mouth, pointed beard, and long nose, then said calmly, "Fine, I'm waiting for him." A sarcastic smile danced on Andrew's lips as he said, "You will go to him, where he sits in his car, Señor Ancio." Adam let out a short, sarcastic laugh, crossed his arms over his chest, and said derisively, "How strange! I don't recall ever owing such an amount." James smiled calmly and said, "I lost that amount because of you, Señor Ancio. I had bet on the previous champion's victory, and—" Adam interrupted him, saying, "You surprise me, mister. Did you think that betting outcomes are always positive?" James' smile widened as he adjusted his red carnation, then said, "I like your cheerful spirit, Señor Ancio, and I believe I need to speak with you at length. You are my guests for dinner tonight. I mean you and your captivating blonde colleague." Adam stared at his face for a moment, then said slowly and calmly, "I will think about it, Mr. James. Perhaps." James took Mona's hand and bowed dramatically, kissing her fingertips, saying with a smile, "I'll be waiting for you at 7." He then took several steps toward his car, and before entering it, he turned to Adam and Mona and smiled, saying calmly, "It will be a business dinner, Señor Ancio." His car sped away, followed by the armed guards' vehicles. Mona sighed deeply and, relaxing her shoulders, said, "Terror gripped me for a moment when their pistols were aimed at us. I thought it was the end." Adam smiled calmly and said, "As for me, I only felt fear for one moment." Mona looked at him with increased astonishment and curiosity, asking, "You felt fear? When?" He smiled cunningly, touching his false mustache, saying, "When I was on the back of that wild horse. I feared at that moment my false mustache would fall off and our cover would be blown."
Adham took a revolver from his bag, quickly inspecting it to ensure it was ready for use. He was loading it with bullets when 3 successive knocks echoed at his door. He said calmly, tucking his pistol into a secret pocket beneath his jacket, "You may enter, my dear Catherine. I have finished dressing." Mona gently pushed the door open and entered the room. Adham let out a long whistle of admiration as he gazed at her elegant pink dress and her soft, blonde dyed hair, which was swept back behind her head, leaving a few strands cascading over her shoulders, enhancing her beauty. Her cheeks flushed with shyness when Adham said in a voice almost a whisper, "Oh, the splendor! You look like a queen of legends, my dear." Her cheeks flushed even deeper as she said,
"You also look exceedingly elegant, Major." Adham was wearing a black suit adorned with strips of shiny black satin, and beneath it a white shirt and a small black bow tie. He smiled sarcastically, saying, "And why not, my dear? Don't forget, we are about to dine with the king of crime and espionage in Texas." Mona sat on a nearby chair, clasping her hands in front of her face, and said, "Why are we pursuing this man, Adham? I mean, why, apart from the matter of Major Isam's death?" He shrugged, saying, "We are trying to uncover what he is aiming for, my dear." She tilted her head to the left, saying, "Why didn't we consider the possibility of him killing Isam merely because he was conducting some investigations about him? I mean, a man like James Brand would not allow any man, whatever his affiliation, to investigate him, and he would seek to eliminate him out of a sense of power and greatness, and it is not necessary that this be due to espionage acts that harm the security of Egypt or other countries." Adham remained silent for a moment, then said, "Perhaps, my dear, but his act of eliminating Isam in itself is an act that demands retribution from us, and this retribution will only come by destroying James Brand and his empire." He then rose and helped her up, continuing in a voice that instilled anxiety within her. "I smell danger in this man, Mona, and I will not be content with merely destroying him. Rather, I seek his utter humiliation. This is the least punishment for anyone who dares to challenge Egyptian intelligence." James Brand greeted them with exaggerated warmth, kissing Mona's fingertips in a diplomatic manner, saying with a smile, "Welcome to my humble palace. I feared for a moment you would decline my invitation."
Muna gazed at the imposing palace with its furnishings that indicated the extent of its owner's wealth, then said, "Do you call this place your humble palace? Your phrase is the humble one, Mr. James." James was wearing a bright red suit, somewhat unsuitable for his age, a pristine white shirt, and a red kufiya dotted with white. In his lapel, a white carnation was pinned, and between his fingers a luxurious cigar he chewed. He smiled as he said, "This palace looks like a humble shack next to your dazzling beauty, my dear Catherine." He led them immediately to a large table laden with various expensive dishes, meticulously prepared. He sat at its head, while Adham sat to his right, with Muna beside him. Adham smiled sarcastically when Andrew sat at the seat opposite him across the table, his face covered with bandages. James said, "This is Andrew, my right-hand man, Senor Anzio. He is the man whose face you smashed this morning." Adham, with his usual sarcasm, retorted, "If he had spoken with a little courtesy, he would have been spared that for the sake of this meal." Annoyance appeared on Andrew's face, while James laughed and said, "You showed remarkable skill, Senor Anzio, skill that almost cost you your life." One of James's servants approached Adham and poured some wine into the glass in front of him, but Adham said calmly, "Excuse me, I don't drink alcohol." James raised his eyebrows, feigning surprise, and said, "How strange. You'd be even more surprised if you knew you also smoke." Adham nodded affirmatively and said, "Let your surprise grow, Mr. James. Catherine also neither smokes nor drinks alcohol." James burst into laughter and said, "Just like the heroes of old television series." Everyone dined in silence, punctuated by some discussions about old politics and rodeo competitions. At the end of the dinner, James lit a luxurious cigar and said calmly, leaning back in his chair and observing Adham's face with a scrutinizing eye, "Would you deny me an answer to a question that puzzles me, Senor Anzio?" Adham straightened in his chair and said calmly, "That depends on the type of question, mister." James leaned forward and stared directly into Adham's eyes, saying, "Who are you really, Senor Anzio?" Adham let out a short laugh and said calmly, "A funny question. I am Anzio Sanchez, a Mexican immigrant to the United States of America." James interrupted him with a sarcastic laugh, saying, "Let's dispense with your claims, Senor Anzio. I'm asking you about your real name and identity." Adham calmly said, "Anzio Sanchez, Mr. James." James smiled calmly, and anticipation and interest appeared on Andrew's face as he listened to his master say, "It's
Strange, then, that the picture of Anzio Sanchez at the immigration office doesn't resemble you at all. He's fat and bald." He then leaned forward, his eyes narrowing, and continued, "Our man Sander tried to gather any information about you, senor, and strangely enough, he met the original Anzio and found no one there who knew anything about you. You are an unknown, mysterious man, senor, and I am a man who dislikes mystery." Adham calmly rose, followed by Mona, and said, "Thank you for this lavish dinner, Mr. James. I regret having to leave, but I am accustomed to sleeping early." James slammed his hand on the table, saying angrily, "You won't leave this place before you tell me everything I want to know, man." Adham crossed his arms over his chest and looked at James defiantly, saying sarcastically, "And who will stop me then?" Andrew stood up and said defiantly, "There are more than 30 armed men around the palace, Senor Anzio." Adham let out a sarcastic laugh that surprised them, then said, "You are terribly weak in biology, Andrew. Don't you know that to eliminate a venomous snake, you don't need to tear it apart? It's enough to crush its head." James' eyes narrowed as he said, "What do you mean, man?" In a flash, Adham had pulled his pistol from his secret jacket pocket and aimed it at James Brand's head, saying sarcastically, "That's exactly what I mean, Mr. James." James and Andrew's faces paled, and the servants froze in their places, gripped by confusion. No one dared to take a single step until James said in a voice no less pale than his face, "Are you going to kill me, Senor Anzio?" Adham shrugged and said with calm sarcasm, "Not a bad idea, Mr. James, but it hadn't crossed my mind until this moment." He then calmly returned his pistol to his jacket, saying, "I merely wanted to prove to you the failure of the intensive security measures you surround yourself with. Your demise was but a hair's breadth away, Mr. James." James remained silent, staring at Adham's face in astonishment, then burst out laughing, hitting the armrest of his chair with mirth, much to the surprise of his servants, Andrew and Mona, while Adham remained silent, smiling, until James said, "Excellent, young man, excellent. You impress me more every moment."
The servants exchanged bewildered glances, while Andrew stared at his master's face in astonishment and cried out, "Mr. James, do you know what you're saying?" James roared back at him furiously, "Silence, you fool!" Then he sprang to his feet and slammed his fist on the table again, shouting, "Haven't you understood what happened? Haven't you noticed that the security guards, whom you personally supervised choosing, neglected to search this man?" Andrew's face paled as he gestured with his arm, saying, "I thought it was impolite to search guests." James guffawed nervously and shouted, "Politeness? Since when do you care about the rules of politeness, Andrew? If this man were a suicide bomber intending to get rid of me, I would now be history." Adham said calmly, "And now will you allow us to leave, Mr. James?" James turned to him sharply, shouting, "No, not now, Signor." Then his features suddenly softened as he added, "But of your own free will, Signor Anzio. You are a man difficult to let go of easily, and I must speak with you at length, alone. Forgive me, my blonde beauty, for I have a deal for Signor Anzio that will surely make his mouth water."
James's office was luxurious in every sense of the word. On his desk stood a collection of closed-circuit television screens. It was clear that James Brand was a man consumed by fear and anxiety, which is why he surrounded himself with every possible security measure. This thought crossed Adham's mind as he gazed at the room until James, exhaling the smoke of his fourth cigar that evening, said, "I'd be pleased, now that we are alone, Signor Anzio, if you would grant me some trust and tell me the truth." Adham feigned fidgeting, then said, "And what would compel me to grant you this trust, Mr. James?" James raised his hand in front of his face and said with a smile, "Nothing, Signor Anzio, no guarantees at all. The matter rests entirely with you." Adham feigned deep thought for a few moments, his head bowed, then faced James and said, "Very well, Mr. James, you live by trust." He then straightened in his chair and said slowly and calmly, "I am not Mexican, Mr. James. I am a wealthy Spaniard, a Spaniard who loves adventure and seeks excitement in every corner of the earth." Astonishment clearly showed on James's face as he listened to Adham. He then furrowed his brow and asked with interest, "A Spaniard? And your real name?" Adham simply said, "Alberto Safeon, an ordinary, unknown name." James smiled cunningly and said, "Your answer puzzles me even more, forgive me, Signor Alberto. But how can a Spaniard be so skilled in rodeo?" Adham gave a short laugh and said, "Is that what astonishes you to this extent? I am perfectly skilled in horsemanship, Mr. James, and rodeo requires strength and fortitude more than it requires skill." James smiled and said, "I attest to both, Signor Alberto." He then took a few steps and extinguished his cigar, saying calmly, "Since you seek adventures and excitement, what do you think of someone who can provide them to you in addition to $3 million a year?" Adham let out a long whistle, then said, "$3 million? A huge sum indeed, Mr. James. But what is the nature of this unique work?" James turned, smiling, and raised his glass as if preparing to toast Adham, saying, "Espionage, Signor Alberto. It is the most exciting and financially rewarding profession in the world."
Adham remained silent for a moment, as if comprehending James's words, then said slowly, "This work involves extreme danger, Mr. James, and requires time to think." James said playfully, "Of course, Señor Alberto, of course. I will grant you time to think until tomorrow evening. Until then, you and your captivating blonde friend will remain my guests." Odham smiled sarcastically, saying, "You mean we will remain as prisoners, Mr. James?" James shook his head calmly, saying, "Absolutely not, Señor Alberto. As proof of that, I will leave you your pistol. Is that enough proof of my good intentions?" Odham smiled sarcastically, saying, "Yes, in a way, Mr. James." As soon as Odham left to take Mona to their room in James Brand's palace, Andrew rushed to his master and asked in astonishment, "What are you planning, sir? This man is still a source of doubt for me." A malicious smile appeared on James's face as he said, "How foolish you are! Did you think I would handle matters so superficially?" He then picked up the telephone and dialed a very long number, saying, "This is one of the benefits of scientific progress, Andrew. You can contact the other side of the world in an instant." As soon as he heard the voice of the person on the other end of the line, he said, "Hello, Mario. This is James Brand. Yes, I know very well how early it is for you in Madrid, but I need some information very quickly about a wealthy Spaniard named Alberto Sofian. Yes, everything you can gather, for much will depend on this information." His eyes narrowed cunningly as he said, "Either Señor Alberto will, based on this, become one of our most important men, or the grave will be the proper place for him."
For a narrator telling an espionage thriller detective story, aim for a voice with these qualities. 1. Depth and authority. Mid-low register, not booming, but solid enough to convey confidence and gravitas. Avoid overly bright or cartoony tones. 2. Dynamic pacing. Measured, steady pace when laying out background or procedural detail. Slightly faster in action or suspense scenes to ratchet up tension. Keep these contrasts clear but not jarring. 3. Crystal clear enunciation with key word emphasis. Pronounce every syllable cleanly. Lean in to pivotal words like evidence, suspect, betrayal, with a tiny pause or breath beforehand. 4. A touch of grittiness. A subtle rasp or gravelly edge suggests a seasoned investigator who's seen too much. Don't overdo it, just enough roughness to feel real. 5. Controlled emotion. Even-keeled tone for routine narration and investigative dialogue. Hushed intensity when revealing secrets or double crosses. Let the story's twists provide the drama, not an over-the-top performance. 6. Hints of mystery. Slightly lower volume or a softer delivery when posing big questions like, "But one clue remained hidden." Return to normal projection when delivering the answer. 7. Neutral professional accent. Standard modern English pronunciation, no heavy regionalisms. It feels credible to an international audience of thriller fans. Putting it all together, a voice that's deep yet flexible, paced for suspense, exquisitely clear, with just a whisper of gravel, and emotion carefully modulated, perfect for drawing listeners into a covert world of secrets and betrayals. The director of Egyptian intelligence raised his head from the papers he was scrutinizing and rested his chin on his fist, looking at Major Hazem. He then gestured meaningfully with his hand, saying, "Well, Hazem, what exactly do you want to tell me?" Hazem smiled, the smile of a man who knew the importance of the news he carried, and said, "We have received a telegram from Spanish intelligence, sir." Interest and seriousness appeared on the Director of Intelligence's face as he said, "Come, Khazem, tell me its contents." Khazem said calmly, "Mario has begun his investigations into Alberto Sofian, and Spanish intelligence will place everything we want James Brand to receive in his path." The Director of Intelligence smiled with relief and said, "Excellent. This means our plan is proceeding as we intended, and in just a few days, Adham Sabri will become James Brand's right-hand man." Khazem said, "Yes, sir, and it's amusing that his cooperation with Spanish intelligence in the Leopard case has borne fruit this time." The Director of Intelligence nodded calmly and said, "That's right, Khazem. Adham truly deserves the title of the Impossible Man, by right." Khazem nodded in agreement, then hesitated for a moment, the effect clearly visible on his face, so much so that the Director of Intelligence asked him with a paternal smile, "Well, say what you want. Don't hesitate." Khazem shrugged and said, "I wanted to ask a question that Adham and I previously failed to find a convincing answer to." The Director of Intelligence smiled widened as he said, "And what is this difficult question?" Khazem asked after a moment of hesitation, "Why do you insist on sending a girl with Adham constantly on every mission?"
Mission he embarks on? This is unusual in intelligence work. The Director of Intelligence pointed with his index finger, smiling. "This is the reason, Khazem. This matter is unusual in intelligence work, and therefore those we pursue constantly assume that an intelligence officer would not bring a girl who would hinder his work. This makes Adham less susceptible to suspicion." He then returned to his papers as if ending the meeting, saying, "Every step in intelligence work is precisely studied, so don't worry, Major." Mona Tawfiq leaned towards Adham Sabri's ear as they sat alone in James Brand's palace garden and whispered with relief, "It's clear James trusts you completely, Adham. He didn't even try to disarm you of your pistol." Adham smiled sarcastically and said, "Nonsense, my dear. James only allowed me to keep my pistol because he is confident that its few bullets won't stand a chance against the machine guns carried by his men who surround every inch of the palace." She asked with astonishment and concern, "Why does he allow us to move freely then?" Autumn said sarcastically, "Because he's waiting for the results of his investigations, my girl, and he knows that escaping from his palace is almost impossible." She smiled cunningly and said, "I bet you can do it." He patted her shoulder and said, "When the time is right, Mona. And it's better if we speak in English, for James is approaching us." James approached them wearing a sky-blue suit, an open-collared shirt, and a white carnation in his lapel, as was his custom. He greeted them, then took a seat beside them, saying, "I hope your stay in my palace is enjoyable, especially for you, my most beautiful blonde I've ever laid eyes on."
Adham said in an angry tone, "Stop that silly flirting, Mr. James. It doesn't suit your 60 years. James forced a pale smile and said, "It's better if your tongue gets used to addressing me with some respect, as long as you'll be working under my command, Senor Alberto." Adham said coolly, "I will, when you stop flirting with my friend." James guffawed, "Damn you, Spaniards! The hot Mediterranean blood runs in your veins." He then straightened in his seat and said seriously, "Let's leave your beautiful friend to enjoy my garden, and let's go together to my office, for there is some work waiting for you this evening." Adham sat for the second time in James's elegant room, listening to him say, "Fortunately for us, my investigations have matched your statements, Senor Alberto, and it will be a pleasure to have a man like you working under my command." Adham suppressed a sarcastic laugh that almost escaped his lips and said calmly, "Since we will be working together, it's best I inform you that I am a man who cherishes privacy, and I snore in my sleep, and I try to keep this a secret." James stared at his face in astonishment and said, "And what does that mean, for God's sake?" Adham said calmly, almost coolly, "It means, in short, that as soon as I return to my room, I will remove the small microphone installed beneath the bed and the one hidden in the window frame. I will also place a piece of thick black leather over the lens of the television camera, skillfully concealed amidst the chandelier hanging from the ceiling." James guffawed merrily and, winking at Adham, said, "There you are, proving once again your skill, Signor Alberto. You truly are the man I need." He then lit a cigar and continued seriously. 3 kilometers from the port of Brownsville, on the U.S.-Mexican border, amidst the waters of the Gulf of Mexico, stands a yacht whose owner calls it the Gold Star. On this yacht is a steel safe equipped with secret numbers and a complex electronic system. Inside this safe is a blue envelope containing modern designs developed by one of the competing companies of my factories. He exhaled his cigar smoke before saying calmly, "And I want these designs photographed tonight, without their owners noticing what happened." Adham smiled sarcastically and said, "This work falls under the scope of theft, not espionage, Mr. James." James smiled cunningly and said, "You can consider it a test or an experiment of your ability to access difficult places and your skill in opening safes and photographing documents. Do you think you are capable of performing this work, Signor Alberto?" Adham pursed his lips and shrugged, saying, "Of course, but I need some information about the safe system, the yacht's guarding method, and so on." James said quickly, "I'll give you all the information you want." He then added quickly,
"I have bribed one of the security guards on the yacht and obtained the necessary information from him." Adham's eye narrowed, and he smiled sarcastically, saying, "All right, Mr. James, I will do this work, and you will get clear pictures of these documents before midnight." Mona furrowed her brow and said with concern, "It's a minor mission, but it involves extreme danger, Adham. What if something happens to you?" Adham laughed with his sharp sarcasm and said, "When we return to Egypt, I will ask them to force you to attend an additional training course, Captain, for your mind has grown accustomed to laziness." Her eyebrow rose as she pursed her lips in anger, saying, "What do you mean by this sarcasm?" His sarcastic smile widened as he said, "You should have understood immediately that this yacht belongs to James Brand." Her eyes widened in astonishment, and she was unable to speak as she stared at Adham, who continued simply, "This seems clear, my dear. If this yacht belonged to a competing company and he was able to bribe one of its guards, why would he send another man to photograph the required documents with all the danger that entails? Wouldn't it have been easier and safer for the guard himself to do what was required, especially since he obtained the electronic alarm system for the safe and its secret numbers?" He then added in a cunning tone, "This mission is a test for me, my dear, a test of trust, not a test of abilities. Therefore, it must be completed in a way that impresses James Brand himself."
The guards of the Gold Star yacht moved nervously across its deck, looking occasionally into the darkness-shrouded waters, until one of them said impatiently, "It seems our man has chickened out of his mission." Only a flat-nosed man replied, "Mr. James assures us he will come. I must pretend to help him."
A third man said angrily, "Why did the boss order us to turn off the yacht's lights? I'm tired of the darkness." The flat-nosed man said, "Don't forget that I'm supposed to be working for Mr. James according to his plan, and I'm also supposed to disable the generator so that Signor Alberto can board the yacht and photograph the documents." One of them laughed nervously and said, "The boss is truly crazy about this Alberto." Suddenly, the flat-nosed man pointed to them, saying in a low voice, "Silence, guys. I think I hear the sound of a motorboat approaching." He pricked up his ears. Then one of them said sarcastically, "That's right. How silly. This Alberto is using a method that wouldn't even deceive elephants." The flat-nosed man pursed his lips in contempt and said, "That's right. What an idiot." The sound of the motorboat stopped, and one of the men shouted in sarcastic joy, "Hooray, guys! It seems he'll be swimming here." The flat-nosed man hissed at him, "Hush, man. Don't raise your voice. We're not supposed to know anything about that." They waited a long time, staring into the darkness, towards the direction where the motorboat had stopped, enveloped in silence, until one of them said angrily and in a low voice, "What is this man doing? If he crawls at the speed of a turtle, he would have reached the yacht at least 15 minutes ago." The flat-nosed man said anxiously, "He seems to be reviewing his calculations. It's clear this Alberto is very hesitant, guys." Suddenly, one of them turned sharply, saying, "Listen, I think I heard the sound of something falling into the water." They exchanged glances in the faint moonlight. Then one of them said, "Strange, I didn't hear anything at all." The others agreed with him, and the first man said insistently, "I cannot be mistaken about this. The sound was clear."
The flat-nosed man turned on his walkie-talkie and said in a low voice, "This is the Gold Star. I'm waiting for your orders, Mr. James." James's voice came from the receiver, sharp and decisive. "Keep still, Andrew, and continue with the plan. It's time for the test." Andrew muttered in amazement, "A test? This is a real struggle, sir." His eyes widened in disbelief when he saw Autumn's tall, slender body, dripping with water, ascending with ease onto the yacht's deck, resembling a cat in his agility, then calmly walking towards the cabin that contained the safe. Andrew was about to point his pistol at him, but James's voice on the receiver came even sharper. "Don't move, Andrew. Do not approach him, and do not make any move that might make him suspect you are testing him." Autumn pushed the cabin door open and walked inside, leaving the three men staring at each other in bewildered silence. Andrew said, "I can't imagine this man being a human, sir. He's a devil." James laughed triumphantly. "Precisely. He's a devil, Andrew, and I need a devil like him by my side." He then leaned forward and spoke in a low voice into the walkie-talkie. "Activate the alarm system, Andrew, and raise the yacht's lighting to its maximum intensity. Let's see what this demon will do now." The flat-nosed man rushed inside, and the yacht's alarm system instantly blared a piercing sound, accompanied by flashing red lights that turned the entire yacht into a terrifying hell. Autumn frowned and paused for a moment in front of the safe, then smiled contemptuously and quickly opened it with his bare hands. He pulled out the blue envelope, removed the designs, and began photographing them. In James's office, James and Andrew were staring at a small screen that showed Autumn's movements with surprising clarity. Andrew said in amazement, "Impossible. He opened the safe and he's photographing the documents." James laughed triumphantly. "This is what I expected of him, Andrew. He is truly the impossible man." He picked up the telephone and began pressing its buttons quickly, calling another number as he heard the sound of Autumn's loud, sarcastic laugh coming from the room's speakers. James paused, frowning, then looked at Andrew and said,
"What's wrong with this man? Why is he laughing like that?" Andrew said in amazement. "I don't know, sir. He seems to be laughing at us." James quickly completed the phone call and rushed towards the safe. But Andrew stopped him, pointing to the screen and saying, "Look, sir, he's destroying the designs." James cried out, "He's destroying them? Impossible!" Andrew nodded. "Yes, sir. He's tearing them into small pieces and throwing them into the sea." James pushed Andrew violently and rushed out of the room, shouting, "This man is crazy." He ran at full speed towards the yacht, while Andrew followed him in bewilderment. Adham finished destroying the designs and smiled, throwing the last piece into the sea. He turned to leave the cabin when James Brand stormed in like a raging bull, followed by Andrew. James stopped Adham, shouting, "You devil! You've destroyed them! You've destroyed them!" Adham said calmly, "Why do you call me a devil, Mr. James? I only helped you destroy some of your personal property." James roared, "My personal property? Do you know what you've done, you fool? Do you know that the designs you've destroyed are the same designs that I was supposed to receive from that competing company? To steal their technology?" Adham smiled cunningly and said, "Of course I know, Mr. James. That's why I destroyed them." James glared at him with furious eyes and said, "You knew? Then why did you destroy them, you wretch?" Adham smiled coldly and said, "Because they belong to a company that is friendly to my country, Mr. James, and it is my duty to protect the interests of my country. And now I must ask you to stand aside." James burst into laughter and said, "You are a lunatic. You think you can escape from here?" He gestured to Andrew to call his men, but Adham was faster. He pulled out his pistol and aimed it at James's head, saying, "I'm not asking you, Mr. James. I'm ordering you." James's face turned pale and Andrew froze in his place. Adham tied James's hands with a rope, then turned to Andrew and said, "As for you, Andrew, you will come with me." Andrew tried to resist, but Adham punched him in the stomach, making him collapse to the ground. Adham tied his hands as well, then pushed them both towards the edge of the yacht. James cried out, "What are you doing? Are you going to throw us into the sea?" Adham smiled coldly and said, "Precisely, Mr. James. You will both be my guests tonight at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico." He pushed them both into the water and watched them struggle for a few moments, then turned and walked away. Adham arrived at the telegraph office in the city. His blonde hair, blue eyes, thin mustache, and thick beard attracting no attention. He walked with calm, deliberate steps towards a Trans Am car parked beside the curb on the other side of the street. Inside sat a beautiful woman with black hair and green eyes wearing a wide-brimmed cowboy hat. The man tossed his hat onto the back seat, then slipped in beside the beauty and started the car, saying calmly, "I have sent the details of James's conspiracy in code to our directorate in Cairo and asked them to investigate immediately how this wretch obtained his private information regarding the safe's location, its electronic security system, its secret numbers, and its contents." Muna, as he drove off, said, "I think the mission has ended successfully then, since we have uncovered what this man was aiming for." Adham shook his head negatively and said, "On the contrary, my dear, our mission began with this discovery. We have confirmed that James Brand is working against us, and therefore our mission requires his elimination." Muna asked in astonishment, "Why didn't you kill him then, when you had the chance?" Adham said calmly, "I have already answered that question, Muna. I am not seeking to get rid of James Brand, but rather to destroy his entire network." Muna asked with concern, "And do you think he will allow us to do that?" Adham smiled sarcastically and said, "And when do we expect the adversary to allow us that, Muna? On the contrary,